Oh, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Central and South Planning Committee. Me catching myself up in the wires. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards, and I am chairman of this committee. Very warm welcome to members of the public and also anybody who may be following us online. No announcements before. However, I'm just going to add a little bit extra in. The traffic out there is chaotic, which I understand is a consequence of an incident on the M25. Just shows you how that ripples through our borough. And as a consequence, we are a couple of members light. We may also be members of the public light. And so I will be checking with you as we go through the agenda who's present, so that we may adjust the running order to ensure that those who aren't here that we believe will be attending are given the opportunity to be here. So I hope you'll bear with me on that. Okay, when we come to running the meeting this evening, fire alarms, there isn't one expected, so if it goes, it will be for real, and we will be evacuating. And the way out, the best way out is out through these double doors, and then effectively off to your right, not right round the corner, there's another set of double doors and down some stairs. We will be going with you, so don't panic. We will show you out safely. If for whatever reason those doors are blocked, there are fire exits behind here. So we're okay. Mobile phones, if I can ask that everybody does turn their mobile phones off. I have to turn this one to silent. I've been caught before. You turn your mobile phone off, but not the iPad that it's linked to. Let's get rid of that. Okay, and the residents' feedback forms. There are forms provided on the chairs. Oh, they're on the table. I would encourage you to fill one in and let us know how we're doing, and more importantly, how we can improve. I mean, the purpose of these meetings is to consider the planning applications, but we also wish to make them accessible to members of the public so they can understand what's going on. So do please provide your feedback, and anybody who's following us online, I understand you can access that feedback form from a drop-down menu. Okay. A little bit about how the committee is run. Loads of people around the table. The actual deciders, the committee members, are councillors, and I will introduce them to you. From my far right-hand side, Councillor Stead, and then we have Councillor Chandel, Councillor Chapman, and Councillor Yarrow, and on my far left-hand side, Councillor Birra. We do have three councillors who should be with us. We're expecting them to be with us. However, as I say, I do believe they're caught up in traffic. We are, however, quorum. So even if they don't attend, we are able to make decisions this evening. We have a number of other people with us who I will introduce to you and point out their roles. On my far left-hand side, Glenn Egan, he is our legal advisor. Luke Taylor, Democratic Services, keeps minutes and keeps me in track. James Rogers, Head of Planning, and gives expert advice. Meg Harani will be presenting each application, telling us about what's happening. By the way, we've all received the papers long before and have read them all. And Ahmed Akram is our highways engineer, will answer matters on related to traffic. As I say, the format is straightforward presentation. The councillors will vote, and as chairman, I only vote in the event of a tie, an unusual event that will be. Okay, so I think we're about ready to go. Have we? Is Miss Julie Clark? You have made it. Mr. Phil Kerwin. You are. So this is right. A slight little bit of confusion here.
It might be that someone's put it in the wrong way, so he was supposed to be speaking.
Ms. Clark, can I ask, on what basis are you appearing? Are you the lead petitioner?
I am the lead petitioner, yes.
Are you objecting in your petition?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Murphy, is it?
Yes.
And you are the agent for the applicant? Yes. Thank you very much. That is clear. Councillor Duncan has arrived, and because we haven't got into the matter, we can continue with it. And Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I do apologise, Committee Chair. I was just caught in horrific traffic. It's taken me almost an hour to travel 3 miles.
I know, it's quite understand that. Okay, and item 7 will be Mr. Paul Bolster present. You are. And do we have the agent
Haven't heard.
Saxena or Lakar?
I'm not where they were attending.
But we haven't heard. Okay. It seems as though we can go in the running order before us. Okay, so let's start. We go with agenda item 1, which is apologies.
Are you doing the minutes out? I'll leave it.
Yeah, we'll go through it quickly. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
We've got apologies from Councillor Brightman and Councillor Stead is substitute.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, matters becoming before this meeting. Are there any additional matters, colleagues? Thank you. Sign and receive the minutes of. We have 2 sets of minutes. We have the actual planning meeting on the 10th of April. Are they agreed?
Great.
Thank you very much. And the meeting on the 10th of May, short one.
Great.
Great, thank you very much. Little bit of process. Item 4 is just to say that there have been no matters notified in advance or urgent. And item 5 is just to formally state there will be 2 parts to this meeting. Part 1, which are the general planning applications, which are probably the ones that you have most interest in. That is held in public. And Part 2, which is held in private. They're matters of enforcement. We will break between the 2 meetings, and members of the public, if any are remaining at that point, will be invited to leave, and we break the video link to enable us to discuss in private matters that can end up in legal action, and that is the reason for it being considered in private. Okay, so we're now going to get into agenda item 6. I will let you know how we run the petitions as we get to them, but we'll get straight into the presentation first, and then I'll describe how we move forward from there. Mr. Rani.
Thank you, Chairman. This application relates to a site comprising land located to the rear of properties fronting Sandow Crescent and Nestlés Avenue, which is currently occupied by a yard with rows of garages and single-storey buildings used for light industrial or office use. Some of the garages are currently used by local residents for parking. The proposal is for the erection of 7 2-storey 3-bedroom dwellings. The application is a subject to 5 letters and a petition, and the details of the consultation replies are set out on pages 12 and 13 of the agenda. The main issues for members to consider are the principle of the development and highways and parking. Members will recall that a similar application was presented to committee in September of last year and refused, and the reasons for refusal are set out on page 10 of the agenda. Under the previous application, the Council considered that further land assembly of surrounding area could result in a more acceptable development proposal, and that releasing this backland parcel of land could also prejudice any wider land assembly or release of land for housing. The applicant has approached the adjoining landowners and has stated that there was no interest in a joint application, and has advised that it is not likely that it will become so in the near future. In order to try and overcome the issue relating to development of the site failing to safeguard satisfactory redevelopment of adjoining sites which have development potential, the applicant has made an assessment of potential for the land adjacent to the site boundary and has revised the site layout such that, should the option of the development of adjoining sites become available in the future, the application site could still be used as part of a wider and more comprehensive development for the area. Whilst the revisions to the layout and identification of linked access to potential future development and neighbouring sites is welcomed, concerns are maintained about the inefficient use of land within a highly accessible location, where strategic planning policies identify housing growth is expected to occur. The proposal would have a density of 43.5 units per hectare, which is less than the previous application. This is well below the minimum density of 50 units per hectare recommended for a suburban area in the local plan, Part 2 and the London Plan. Thus, as with the previous application, concerns are raised that such a site should come forward in a housing zone with a density well below London Plan recommendations. The previous application was also refused on the grounds that an acceptable access to the site was not provided. Again, whilst additional information has been provided, Council's Highway Officer has continued to maintain an objection in terms of the size of the access, the potential for its use by larger vehicles, and possible pedestrian and vehicular conflict. Proposal is thus considered unacceptable for this reason. In conclusion, whilst the proposal is not considered to impact on the residential amenities of nearby properties and would comply with council requirements in terms of the provision of amenity space and size of units, it is considered to be piecemeal development, which is unacceptable in principle. The proposal also fails to provide an acceptable access to the site. The application is thus recommended for refusal. I can just go through the plans. That's the site. And the site plan and site layout. A larger version of the layout, and then floor plans and elevations. That is the access to the site. Then this is within the site itself. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Ms. Clark.
Hi.
Hi. Petition. Please come forward. Make yourself comfortable at the table. Before you, you'll see a microphone on the table and a little button towards the front edge. That's the toggle on and off. In giving your petition, you have 5 minutes speaking time, controlled by the clocks, by the lights. Green light will commence your speaking time, 4 minutes. Then we'll go to amber for 1 minute. So when you see the amber light, you've got 1 minute left. And when it comes to red, I need to draw you to a close at that point. I can't allow people to go on beyond the red. Just out of sense of fairness, we need to keep it to the 5 minutes. Okay? So at your own time, when you're ready, you toggle on the microphone and we'll start.
Good evening. So the narrow access road within Sandow Crescent cannot accommodate large vehicles, as I hope the photos and the link that I shared with you proves. If vehicles need to go into the proposed site, they must first negotiate a 90-degree turn into the access road, using only half of the road as vehicles are parked all the way along the left-hand side. Vehicles larger than a transit van cannot make the turn. This would mean all large vehicles, including delivery vehicles, would have to stop in Sandow Crescent and offload, therefore blocking the Crescent. There just isn't a space to allow access for pedestrians and vehicles to pass in the narrow access road. The technical note from iTransport, point 2.16, states that if a vehicle and pedestrian meet on the narrow access road, they could pass cautiously or give way to each other. The highway code is quite clear. You must always give way to pedestrians. Pedestrians must surely have a safe and designated area to walk along. The technical note from iTransport 3.12 also states you must bring your bin to a collection point located a third of the way down the narrow access road. It will narrow the access even more and is a safety hazard to vehicles and pedestrians. The rubbish for the Crescent is collected at the end of Sandow Crescent and the corner of Nestles Avenue, as the bin lorry cannot get into the Crescent. This is a very long walk from the land located behind the Crescent. Although it is stated that fire hydrants would be installed as a fire engine could not reach the site, it is deemed as acceptable but far from best practice. The preference would be for fire engines and other emergency vehicles to be able to enter and turn once in the site. If you look at the drawing from iTransport of the panel van entering the narrow access road, it is incorrect. It shows that parking ceases on the left-hand side of Sandow Crescent before the access road. That isn't right. You can park all the way along the left-hand side of Sandow Crescent. I cannot count how many times Mr. Khan and I have replaced fences or how many brick pillows have been rebuilt due to vehicles not being able to get in and out of the access road and getting stuck. We met with Donica Murphy from Stonegate Homes at the site to see if we could come to some resolution, as despite being in the Hayes housing zone, we would prefer a smaller development to the rear of the Crescent rather than becoming part of a concrete jungle. Building applications are already in place for 3 large sites in Nestles Avenue: Access Storage, the Car Museum and of course the Nestles Factory. All 3 sites are within yards of Sandown Crescent. The residents do not wish to be swamped by high-rise flats. Donica has made lots of suggestions for relocation of the bin storage, planting trees at the east end of the site to reduce overlooking and to separate vehicle and pedestrian access. We would therefore welcome any new proposals for a smaller site from Stonegate Homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, do you have any questions at all of our petitioner, Ms Clark? No, thank you. Can I invite you to turn the microphone off and then return to your seat? Thank you very much. Cheers. Mr Murphy, you'd like to come forward? You similarly, sir, have 5 minutes of speaking time, 4 minutes with the green light, 1 with the amber, and I'll draw you to a close at the red. We'll commence again when you toggle on the microphone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Apologies. The subject site is a brownfield site within an area zoned for housing. The northern section of the site contains some older garages which are no longer fit for purpose and which are currently used for storage. The central and southern sections of the site contain 4 commercial units, 2 of which are currently in use. Access to the site is via a long-standing access from Sandown Crescent to the east of the site. As you can see from the map, to the north and east of the site there are residential properties. To the northwest there's a children's nursery, and immediately to the west there's a medical centre. To the southwest there's a block of flats, and to the south of the site there's a former pub, which is currently the subject of an application for 21 units. I have been speaking with Ms Clark and trying to address her concerns regarding the application, and we did request additional time from the case officer, but unfortunately this was refused. Therefore, I think we have to assess the application on its current merits. The proposed development is for the removal of a non-conforming commercial use and the development of 7 3-bedroom family dwellings which meet and even exceed the council's requirements in terms of internal floor space, outdoor amenity space and parking provision. The recent planning history shows that we had a pre-application inquiry for 9 units, which was considered to be an overdevelopment of the site. Subsequently, we submitted last year a full application for 7 3-bed units, which was refused by the committee. This application is simply a revised version of the previously refused scheme, but we've altered the layout of the development in order to address the previous concerns. Essentially, the council is happy with the principle of development, but it has raised two concerns. Reason 1, the key aspects are inefficient development of a zoned housing site, and B, the impact on the redevelopment potential of adjoining land. In terms of being efficient use of land, original scheme of 9 units met the density requirements, yet this was considered an overdevelopment. We reduced the scheme to 7 units, and now we're being accused of underdevelopment, so we're kind of in limbo. We feel that in a time where no new family dwellings were being provided in the district, only blocks of flats, as Ms Clark pointed out, a proposal which provides 7 family homes which meet all national standards, amenity, outdoor space, parking, etc., would be welcomed by the council, especially as it accords with the character and scale of the surrounding development. As I said, we would be happy to introduce further changes, landscaping details, and there is potential for an additional pathway to the northwest of the site, which would address some of the concerns. We did raise this issue with the case officer, but under the application we weren't allowed to make changes. We would also like to point out that the site is within a housing zone, but it's not part of any master plan. Therefore, we fail to see what exactly the proposal is contrary to. This is a matter of opinion rather than strict policy in our view. We have contacted the neighbouring properties, and there's little on 4 occasions to date, and we've had no responses. One of the properties is a children's nursery, one's a medical centre, one of the other sites is a block of flats with maybe 25 owners, which makes it very complicated in order to get a site together, and the final site is currently an application for 21 units, which makes that difficult as well. So there's little chance of a comprehensive development coming forward in the near future. All we can do is design our schemes so does not preclude development of adjoining sites. We've done this through keeping separation distances to the properties to the south and west, so these properties can be developed in the future. The second reason for refusal relates to the access. We would like to point out, while appreciate the concerns raised by the neighbours, of course, we'd like to point out that it is an existing access, a long-standing access, which up to recent times served 4 offices and the additional garages. We've revised the plans from the previous application to show larger vehicles such as delivery vans, ambulances and smaller refuse vehicles can not only access the site but have sufficient turning circles within the site as well. We spoke to London Fire Brigade and the refuse team prior to submission, and both were happy with our proposals. It is fully acknowledged that the site is not suitable for access by larger trucks, but there is no need for such vehicles to enter the site in any case, in our opinion. This may cause some issue at construction, which is acknowledged, but this is not a reason to refuse the application on its own. There is options for accessing the site for...
I need to draw you to a close at that point.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you very much, sir.
Right.
Colleagues, are there any questions at all of Mr. Murphy? Thanks, sir. I can invite you please to turn off the microphone and then return to the seats. No, thank you very much. Colleagues, I open this matter now for discussion, debate. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit concerned that this accessway, I know it is an existing accessway, but as far as I can see from the key on the map, it looks to be 3 metres or even less than 3 metres, and with the bin store located there as well, that will also eat into that space, which at the moment, if there's access to office buildings or has been there, presumably wouldn't be there. And I wonder how safe that would be to get something like an ambulance or a large vehicle down satisfactorily. I mean, if I noticed that you can for fire engines, you can have fire appliances that will get water to the site, but I think it's a different matter if it's an ambulance and there's an emergency in one of the homes. How satisfactory would that emergency access be? I was only just thinking about it in terms of reason 2. I do think that is does describe the situation, but whether we need to say is insufficiently wide for satisfactory access by larger and emergency vehicles to strengthen it a bit.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Akram, can you add anything with regards to the width and your assessment around pedestrian vehicle safety? It is quite a lengthy walkway in.
Thank you, Chairman. From my on-site observations, the access width is measured just over 30 metres long. The access length is over 30 metres. The width of the access is measured from 3 metres, 3.2 metres wide. So to accommodate both pedestrians and vehicles, it's a no-no from highway safety. But that being said, it is an existing access. I think you've raised a valid point in terms of ambulances and emergency vehicles getting up that access point, which is why we raised the reason for refusal, the objection. Swept path analysis drawings were carried out as part of the transport, the scoping report. And whilst that demonstrated on-street or parking on-street to take place on the footway, there were revisions made to the parking restrictions recently in March, as discussed with our transport and projects team, where vehicles now have to park all 4 wheels on the carriageway. So that will now make it impossible for transit vehicles and ambulances and whatnot to actually exit the access. So from a highway perspective, it's a no-no really. It's going to raise highway safety concerns.
Thank you very much. I think that's very clearly put. And whilst it's recognised that this has been an access that's used before, what we're changing it is from an access to garages to an access to family homes, when we might expect different utilisation by different makeups, and the idea of prams and pushchairs meeting vehicles coming the other way and one having to reverse against the other is not ideal layout. Colleagues, any further discussion? Councillor Yarrow?
Thank you, Chairman. I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Duncan's comments. I think there are two perfectly good reasons why this should be rejected, and the most serious of those is the fact that there is a difference between driving your car into a garage and then wanting access to an emergency vehicle because it's going to someone's home. So I'm certainly unhappy with that situation. I don't think there's any problem in saying that I'm quite prepared to put forward that we should accept the officer's recommendations. It is a serious situation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ahmed Balana.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with every single word what Mrs. Clark said in her presentation, and I'm happy to second to refuse the application.
Colleagues, it's been formally proposed and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, please, on the rejection of this? That's unanimously agreed, so that application is refused. Thank you. Turn to agenda item 7, number 23, Cowley Crescent.
Thank you, Chairman. This application relates to a site comprising land located to the rear of number 23 Cowley Crescent, which currently forms part of the rear garden of this property. The site has a frontage onto Cowley Crescent. The proposal is for the erection of a 2-storey with rooms in the roof space, 3-bedroom detached dwelling. The application is a subject of 11 letters and a petition, and the details of the consultation replies are set out on pages 28 to 30 of the agenda. The main issue for members to consider are the principle of the development, the impact on adjoining occupiers, the quality of the development provided, and the impact on existing trees. In terms of the principle of the development, members will know much of what I'm about to say about the development of garden land. There are a number of factors which officers have considered and which officers consider should be taken into account. This includes a national planning policy framework, sets out that local authorities should consider the case for setting out policies to resist inappropriate development of residential gardens, London plan policies, which makes it clear that boroughs may introduce a presumption against development of back gardens, and then the council's own adopted local plan part 1 policy B1, which makes clear that development should not result in the inappropriate development of gardens and green spaces. And then the Mayor's Housing Supplementary Planning Guidance provides further guidance on the interpretation of these policies and talks about the character of the area and whether the loss of the gardens should be considered on that basis and whether it is part of the sense of place and quality of life of the area. The prevailing character of the area comprises mainly semi-detached dwellings of similar design set within generous plots. The proposal would result in a detached property which would differ from the surrounding dwellings in terms of its footprint, layout and overall appearance. Furthermore, the development is unrelated to any established building line and as a consequence appears to be arbitrarily sited, and given its prominence, the proposal detracts significantly from the open characteristics of this location and setting. The application is therefore considered not to comply with the local plan, and the principle of the development of the site is considered unacceptable. In terms of the impact on adjoining occupiers, the closest residential property would be the host property at a distance of approximately 7 metres. As such, the proposed house would appear unduly dominant, resulting in a loss of outlook for the host property. In addition, the rear garden of the proposed dwelling would be overlooked from the first floor rear windows of the host property at a very short distance. The proposed bedroom window on the rear elevation would result in overlooking of the rear garden of number 24 and also of the host property, resulting in a loss of privacy. Therefore, it's considered there would be a significant impact on adjoining occupiers. In terms of the quality of the development provided, the London Plan sets out the minimum internal floor space standards for new housing development, and a 3-storey, 3-bedroom, 6-person dwelling would be required to have a minimum size of 108 square metres. The proposed dwelling would be approximately 86 square metres and would fall well short of the standards required. In terms of the impact on the existing trees, there are a number of trees and mature hedges on the site, and there is no information as to whether these are to be protected. A number of trees are shown to be removed, and their loss is considered unacceptable without a tree survey and showing the which trees are to go and how the trees that are remaining are to be protected, and therefore the loss of the trees and hedges is considered unacceptable in terms of the visual amenity of the street scene and the surrounding area. Whilst the proposal would comply with council requirements in terms of the provision of amenity space and parking, the proposed development is considered to be detrimental to the form, plan, layout and character of the local area, and has an adverse impact on adjoining occupiers, does not meet the size requirements of the London Plan, and results in the loss of mature trees. The application is thus recommended for refusal. If I can just go through the plans. That is the application site, and the rear element, as you can see, is the development site. I can just use my pointer. That area there, that is the existing. That's the proposed development. And the site, you can see the existing hedge, and then there's a very mature tree and some other trees within the site and adjoining it which with no information on, so their loss is considered unacceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roger.
Just like to make one minor correction to refusal reason number 3. So this is to do with the first floor bedroom window overlooking both the the existing property and the other half of the semi-detached. So that's numbers 23 and 24. But the refusal reason references a further properties is actually some distance away. So I'd like to delete reference to number 25. It's actually 23 and 24 that would be overlooked. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The petitioner, Mr. Bolster, if you'd like to come forward, sir. I remind you, toggle on and off at the microphone. 5 minutes speaking time, 4 minutes with a green light, 1 minute with an amber, and I'll draw you to a close on the red. Okay, so at your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. First of all, I'd like to make a point that you just made, Councillor, about point number 3, 23, 24, 25. Your report on page 3 does not cover Cowley Crescent number 1, 2, 3, where the window in the front of the elevation of the property in the roof space would be directly in line with the bedroom windows of those said houses. Also, it does not cover on the road traffic management that you, Councillor, commissioned. The road, and I'll read out what we've got here. It is felt by the residents that the survey carried out at the time does not reflect the true amount of vehicles that are parked within Cowley Crescent at the weekends and during the week by people leaving their cars parked in the Crescent and travelling to Uxbridge for work or shopping. Nor does it cover the amount of people that leave their cars and get into taxis to travel to Heathrow for holidays. Nor does the road survey cover Brunel University and the students that park their cars in Cowley Crescent, because they're not allowed a parking space if they live within a certain distance of said university. Lack of parking space in Worcester Road has led to a number of us residents talking to people from Worcester Road parking their work vehicles and taxis, black cabs, in our Crescent as well. Also, the flats around the corner by the Esso garage, 15 or 16 flats, 5 parking spaces. the residents there park their cars down Cowley Crescent, and we've had a number of issues of asking them to move their vehicles so that us residents can get our own cars in and out of our driveways. Green areas. You can see from the plans, and I did submit 2 photographs for the council to see. Green areas. You can see from the plans submitted the long-standing horse chestnut tree, which was planted over 70 years ago by the previous owner when he was 5 years old, and the surrounding tree space will be lost to the crescent. The beautiful trees and hedgerows are vital to the wildlife, and the area provides an open space for them. I'd also like to point out that the council has embarked on a large building programme. In the current building going on is either hundreds or thousands of new properties being built around the council. New houses and flats are being built at the old police station in West Drayton, opposite at the old British Legion Club. The old RAF space across the road is a massive project. New flats are being built just before Stockley Bypass, and the new buildings down by Cedars Car Park. With these new buildings going on, it would be a grave mistake by the council to allow property to be erected at Cowley Crescent, and it will look out of place, spoil the look of the crescent, and upset the residents even more. I'd just like to read out some information passed to me by some of the residents who cannot attend, and they have stated, the property will be obstructive to residents nearby. The increased occupation will put additional strain on the already limited and often congested parking space. The proposed house will be out of character with other properties in what is currently a remarkable and well-presented and original crescent. If the proposed house is allowed to go ahead, developers will soon target other properties in the area, and this will lead to the crescent being degraded even more. There was just one more point while I'm still on the green. I'd like to draw your attention to 7.22 in your report. It states that in the planning, it states that number 17 Kingsway Hayes was a property that was developed in somebody's garden, whereas your report was clearly stated it used to be used as a GP surgery, so it wasn't in a garden, it was a redevelopment of an existing property, which is contravention to what we have at our place at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Colleagues, are there any questions at all of Mr. Ross? No. Thank you very much, sir. If I can invite you to turn the microphone off and return to your seat, thank you. And do we have present the applicant or agent for this? I have the names of Mr. Lakar or Mr. Saxena. No. Okay. In the absence of that, I picked up from the petition 4 substantive items: the overlooking privacy issue to number 1 and number 1, 2 and 3 Cowley Crescent, parking, tree preservation and the out of character. Okay, now I would ask for officers' comment please on the overlooking privacy issue within Cowley Crescent itself, the numbers 1, 2 and 3. Could they comment on that please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have, as part of our standards set out in the residential layout supplementary document, back-to-back standards. We don't have front-to-front standards, and generally it's accepted that if they are similar distance to the existing properties, then that's considered to be acceptable, and in this situation that is the case. The front-to-front standard, as it were, on Cowley Crescent, those properties that front and that face each other are a similar distance to the proposed and 1 to 3 and 5 Cowley Crescent present. So we haven't put that as a reason for refusal.
Thank you very much. And comment also, please, Mr. Akram, on the parking. Parking is provided. Can you comment on whether our parking standards?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The development requires 2 parking spaces in accordance with our parking standards. They do provide 2 or 3 parking spaces, so they fully conform with the current standards.
Thank you very much. So with regards to the overlooking and privacy issues number 1, 2 and 3 Cowley Crescent and the parking demand, should this development be allowed, both are within our present policy. Is that correct?
I can perhaps give members further comfort on the overlooking issue. There's a 20-metre scale bar on the location plan, and the distance between the properties and the proposed dwelling is greater than the 20 metre scale bar. So bear in mind that even if we were doing a back-to-back distance of 21 metres, there's actually a wide gap between the properties.
Thank you very much. Tree preservation and the character of the street have been commented on in the presentation and within the report. So, colleagues, I now open this up for your discussion and consideration, please. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I don't have any problem with this. I think it's a good report and it covers everything. Just on a matter of detail, perhaps if the officer could just explain standard reason, non-standard reason 3. I know we're taking out 25 Cowley Crescent, but it's talking about overlooking from the rear bedroom window, and if we take a 90-degree angle from that rear bedroom window, I believe it does look over the gardens of number 23 and 24, but it doesn't actually look into the windows as far as I could see, and that's why I would just like to query that point.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Duncan is correct. It doesn't look directly into the window, so it is an overlooking of the garden issue as opposed to the overlooking of between windows issue. So it's the use of the garden by the existing occupiers and their loss of privacy that we're concerned with.
Thank you. Does our guidance specifically include the overlooking of an area that immediately adjacent to the house considered to be a patio?
There is a distance that, again, we talk about 21 metres plus another 3 metres patio area, so if it's within 24 metres normally, then it's unacceptable, but also there's generally inspectors have accepted that even at 21 metres it's acceptable, and this is less than 21 metres.
Okay, so what we're having here is within about a 45-degree field of view from that bedroom window and overlooking of patio areas and therefore the consequent loss of privacy.
It did used to be spelt out, I believe, more specifically in the guidelines, didn't it?
It is still there.
Very clearly, and maybe that's something that needs to be strengthened next time there's a review. But in view of that, do we need to change that? Or I suppose keep it general, because then if there is any appeal or questioning of that, then it enables you to talk about private garden area, private patio area, things like that, doesn't it?
Members also need to take into account the degree of privacy the residents have at the moment. So because this is quite low density, they have a greater degree of privacy than might apply on other particular locations that might not be so contentious an issue, but here, those two dwellings, they have quite a reasonable degree of privacy, so it's therefore slightly more harmful.
And also mature trees, which help to screen as well.
Okay. Councillor Stead.
Thank you, Chairman. I think with the number of refusal reasons and what we've seen about, you mentioned the tree loss, which you said not to mention, but I thought I would. I would go with the officer's recommendations on this item.
Thank you very much. Is that seconded? Councillor Duncan, thank you very much. So, moved and seconded, subject to amendment of condition non-refusal reason at number 3, deletion of number 25. Is that agreed, colleagues? That's universally agreed. Thank you. Good. Now I'll move on to agenda item number 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This relates to 843 Uxbridge Road, which is a 3-storey...
Sorry. We were confused there. We are the residents of Gary. What was the decision there?
Refused.
Oh, sorry.
Do not apologise. That is very great feedback to me. That I need to be a bit clearer on such a key matter. They agreed with the officer's recommendations that this is refused, okay, and that was unanimously agreed is refused. Thank you. Number 8, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is relating to 843 Uxbridge Road, which is a three-storey mid-terrace property with commercial use on the ground floor and residential on the upper floors. The proposal is to change the use of the ground floor from an existing retail unit to a mixed use of cafe and shisha bar, which is considered to be a sui generis use, and the proposal is also included a single-storey re-extension. The application site is located within a local parade, and within local parades, the council's policies specifically relate to the protection of retail units, unless it can be shown that there are other units within very close proximity which provide essential services. Within this parade, there are very few that provide essential services, and the loss of this unit is considered unacceptable in principle in terms of the impact it would have on the provision of retail in the area. There's also the issue about the impact of the shisha use on adjoining occupiers, residential above and adjoining, and the applicant has provided a noise report, but the officers have looked at this. Our environmental protection unit have considered this, and the report does identify measures to control noise generated by the use. However, it's clear within that report that the noise assessment is based on the extension without the inclusion of ventilation measures, and at least 50% of the extension has to be permanently open in order to comply with the Health Act 2006, which is a smoke-free legislation. So given that a large portion of the extension would be open, there would be impact in terms of noise and disturbance, and also there is no mention in the report of impact from fumes and odour, so there's a reason for refusal relating to that. Members may know that number 839, an application which is the adjoining site, an application was refused for a similar use and dismissed at appeal. It also included a large rear extension, and the inspector on that concluded that the rear extension was out of proportion with the existing property, and so for that reason as well we're recommending refusal on this application. 3 reasons for refusal, and we consider that they're all soundly based. Thank you, Chairman. If I can just go through the plans. This is unfortunately the extension. I can just point out the extension itself. The extension is the larger part, so it is larger than the existing property, and these are the photographs. As you can see, there's very few convenience retail units within the parade. There's a number of takeaways and restaurant uses. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think there's any need for any further debate. I'd like to move that we accept the officer's recommendations on this one.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wallana. Thank you. Show of hands, please, on that one. There's everybody. Thank you very much. That application is refused. No, sir, there are no speaking rights at all at these meetings, other than with regards to the submission of a petition. Okay, so you needed to have had a petition submitted, and well, so you have to have the petition that does comply with the constitution of the council. This is a quasi-judicial function here. We are considering planning applications. We can't have things tabled at the time. Okay, so I'm very sorry that hasn't been allowed, but no petition was received in time, therefore there's no speaking rights, and the application is refused. Agenda item 9, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is relating to land forming part of 31 Rainton Drive, and the application...
Sorry, my apologies. Agenda item 10, item number 9 has been withdrawn.
Agenda item 10, this is relating to land forming part of 31 Rainton Drive. The application is for an additional dwelling, 1 bedroom as described, although your officers consider that it is of a sufficient size, or the bedroom is of a sufficient size to be subdivided to provide 2 bedrooms, and therefore have considered it on the basis that it is a 2-bedroom unit. The application members will know and will see from pages 63 and 64 the considerable history on the site relating to new dwelling being proposed, the latest being earlier this year, was refused for 3 reasons, and again we've got similar application and we're recommending refusal again for 3 reasons. Your officers consider that the site is very difficult to develop because of its depth in particular, and therefore the provision of amenity space becomes very difficult for a new dwelling. It may be possible to extend the property and subdivide it to provide 2 flats where the requirement for amenity space is not so onerous, and therefore we are recommending refusal on this. I can just go through the plans. As you can see, there is a very shallow depth to the garden, and that leads to issues of provision of amenity space, particularly for the existing dwelling, which requires 60 square metres, and therefore the subdivision of the garden becomes an issue in terms of overlooking, because it has to be provided behind the new property. As you can see, so they have to have a odd-shaped garden for the existing property to meet the standard. And whilst there is amenity space within within reasonable distance of the property, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have to meet any of the standards. Sorry, we've jumped. There we are. This is a street scene, the existing property and the garages where the proposed dwelling would be. As I say, there is amenity space within walking distance of this site, but this is well below the standards, and therefore we think that it should be refused on that basis. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Just confirm that grass area there is part of the school rather than public amenities.
Part of public open space, so it is.
It is public.
No, it's not public open space.
Thank you very much.
So
Just wish to clarify that for everybody. Thank you. Colleagues, Councillor Duncan.
I think it's very straightforward. I move officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Yarrow. Thank you. Show of hands, please. Thank you, everybody. Number 11, please.
Very quick on this one. Members again will note from the history, previous applications for the use of the site for residential have been refused on a number of reasons. They're whittling down the number, but in this particular case there is still a reason for refusal relating to the size of the unit not meeting the London Plan standards, and we're recommending refusal on that basis. So for that reason we are recommending refusal. The site is located right on the footpath edge, and members may consider that part of that reason could include the possible privacy issues that may arise, and possible noise and disturbance issues that may arise from the use of the adjoining property, and the impact that would have on the residential unit. It isn't a reason for refusal, but members may consider that it could be included as part of the existing, or the reason for refusal that's set out there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, I seem to recollect that the adjoining is a takeaway. Is that right, or did I imagine that? Fine. It being a takeaway, one might reasonably expect people congregating outside it in the evening and hours. Privacy issue on a bedroom, I think, is pretty fundamental.
Excuse me, I think the existing uses, they're all let out in rooms at the moment, all those rooms above.
What we're considering is agreeing to this being a ground floor flat and bedroom adjacent to a takeaway, and that application is the one before us, and I don't think that is a suitable standard for this borough myself. I think we should be ensuring the privacy of residents. And my view is that we should be considering an additional refusal reason, but that is a matter for the committee to consider. Colleagues, anybody help to take this one forward, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to go with the recommendation. It's just that I know that those rooms are all let out to as single rooms, sometimes with shared kitchen and things like that. And so if we're taking a retail unit and saying it's, next door, well, we shouldn't be taking the retail unit anyway, should we?
The question here before us is whether or not we believe it is appropriate to convert the premise into a residence with a bedroom abutting the pavement when the premise next door is a takeaway that one might reasonably expect evening activity immediately outside a bedroom window, and whether or not that gives rise to a potential loss of residential amenity if that planning permission were granted. Now, I believe there is grounds for consideration of that as an additional refusal reason.
It would give rise to loss of amenity, but normally in a retail parade you would refuse it on the grounds that it's loss of that retail unit.
Yeah. But on this one, the officers have accepted that the loss of retail is not on itself a reason for refusal, and it's acceptable. Is that correct?
Yeah, this isn't a protected parade, unlike the previous application. So in this particular parade, there is no protection for the retail units. It is within very short walking distance of other retail units. And it isn't within a local parade or within any protected parades. So the loss of the retail unit itself, in principle, is acceptable. But as Councillor Edwards has said, it's the impact of the use on the adjoining properties itself on the proposed unit, which is under consideration.
Well, in this particular case, yes, they are unacceptable, aren't they? I wouldn't want my bedroom to be the other side of a restaurant for all sorts of reasons. But so I mean, if we can put in an additional reason for refusal, let's do that on the grounds of amenity. But if we're saying that we don't support retail, really, that there isn't protection for retail here, then possibly in time all of those will go for residential then, won't they, I suppose? Possibly. No. But that's for the future.
That is for the future.
It's not tonight, yeah.
Councillor Stead.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clear up in my own mind, where exactly on the Uxbridge Road is this what we're looking at here?
It's the other side of the open space from where Knights used to be. Just beyond Knights. Yeah, just on the corner of Hewins Road, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have an officer's recommendation for refusal. Consideration of whether an additional refusal reason should be a loss of privacy because of it being a bedroom at the front. Councillor Ahmed Balana.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we should safeguard the privacy of the adjoining properties and then subject to additional condition.
Which we'll delegate to the head of planning to agree appropriate wording. Yes?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. So you propose that one, seconded by Councillor Ahmed Balana. Show of hands, please, on that. That's everybody. Thank you. Okay. Number 12, please.
Again, very quickly, Chairman, this relates to 23 Victoria Avenue, which is an end of terrace junction property. Planning permission was granted previously for extensions to the property and its conversion to two-bed flats. However, the property is structurally unsound and therefore had to be, or is going to have to be demolished, and this application is for a redevelopment. It is very similar to the previous approval. There are differences in terms of the design of the frontage bay window and the windows on the frontage, but other than that, the size and scale of the development is as per previous, and therefore we're recommending approval on that. If I can just go through the plans. This is the previous approval, and members will see the sort of bay window on the frontage, which is similar to the adjoining row of bays, and then this is the proposed. There is a slight difference. The bay is wider, the windows are slightly different, and members may consider that they should reflect the design of the existing. So what you have there is the bay is wider than those that you can see in the picture, and the windows are again different. So again, members may think that the design should be amended, but the officers consider it to be acceptable and have recommended it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, it's a straightforward replacement. The only issue in my mind is whether the adjustment to the windows now just tips it slightly out of character with the remainder of the building, and whether or not there's a resolution by which, if the committee was so minded, we could delegate to the head of planning to rectify that situation, effectively to reinstate the former design of windows into the plan so that it better reflects the block. It does tip it completely out of character with that block, with the new window design. Councillor Duncan.
Well, yes, it does look different. It doesn't add to the cohesiveness. So if we can get them to put in windows that match, I would be in favour of that. Thank
you, Matt. Councillor Bira.
So just to clarify, so if they don't, I mean, I think it's quite clear what's required. So if they don't change the plan, we'll bring it back to planning committee. But if they do change the plan, you're happy to delegate to me to approve? Yes.
Okay, on that understanding, formally proposed by Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor Bira. Show of hands, please, on that. That's everybody. Thank you. Number 13, 60 Carfax Road.
Thank you, Chairman. This relates to a single-storey detached outbuilding and its use as a hair salon, which is a business use. Your officers consider that business use in this location is unacceptable and would have impacts on adjoining occupiers, and therefore we are recommending refusal. There are 3 reasons for refusal, although reason 3 I think we would probably consider not to be very substantial, and therefore we are recommending that this is removed, because we are inspectors have not really accepted that the possible use could be residential. They say that in such cases, if everything else is acceptable, then you can condition the use of the building. Therefore, we are suggesting that that condition or that reason is removed, and reasons 1 and 2 remain. If I can just go through the plans again. That is the building. It is there at the moment. As you can see, it is laid out for hair salon use, and it is clearly a business use. There's a price list somewhere. There it is. So the applicant has provided information which we are sceptical about, shall we say, in terms of its numbers of people attending and so on, and we are considering it as a full-scale business use and therefore consider it unacceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Colleagues. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the report suggests it all, suggesting 5 customers a week
I think he's stretching it a bit. In terms of refusal reasons, taking out 3 I think is a sensible way forward, and I'll go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Is that seconded? Thank you very much, Councillor Yarrow. So, subject to the removal of refusal reason 3, is this agreed? Agreed. Everybody, thank you very much. 210 Central Avenue, number 14.
Thank you, Chairman. This relates to 210 Central Avenue, another property with considerable history. It has been to committee a couple of times and been refused for additional extensions and conversion to flats. In this particular case, the extensions have been scaled down considerably and now comply with the council's policies and standards, and the conversion is acceptable in terms of meeting the standards and size limits that are set out. So we consider this acceptable. Members will note the landscape officer's comments relating to the street tree, and when officers were at the site, they thought that there was an existing crossover to the site, which meant that the street tree wasn't threatened. Whilst there is a drop curb, the crossover is not fully there to provide parking to the frontage, and therefore works may be required to the frontage, and therefore we are suggesting that parking space to the frontage is removed, and we seek again, as same as previous, seek a revised drawing showing that delegated to the head of planning, and 2 spaces for 2 one-bedroom units your officers would consider acceptable and in this area. So for that, subject to those changes, we are recommending approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. For me, it is the issue of the crossover. We can't answer that question now. By removing this, it takes away the issue. We can consider it properly. It does still meet our parking, and there's nothing stopping them then applying for a crossover to be put in, and as long as it's compliant with our trees officer, it can move forward. This enables the developer to go ahead, in my view. So, colleagues. Councillor Duncan, thank you very much.
I can just interrupt before. There is a short addendum. Condition 4 is superfluous, and therefore we are recommending its deletion.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Duncan. Second, Councillor Archmey-Polana. Show of hands, please, on that one. That's everybody. Thank you. Okay, 15. Number 11 Belmont Road.
We seem to have a number of applications, or a larger number of applications with previous history on tonight's agenda. This is another one that came very short time ago and was refused for a number of reasons. That went to appeal. The inspector didn't agree with the council on most of the reasons. The only one that he did agree on was parking. This is in an area where car-free development is acceptable, and therefore we are recommending that it is acceptable now, subject to Section 106 or a unilateral obligation. Within the addendum, I have set out a revised head of term, and I think that the head of planning has additional to add to that, but subject to the revised heads of terms, we are recommending approval.
Yeah, so all I actually want to do is to ensure that the head of terms is the same one we're using on Major Applications Committee, that excludes blue badges and it covers, means they can't get a permit to park in council car parks or in any of the parking management areas.
Very sensible that we standardise our wording. Sorry?
Where are they going to park if they can't park in council's car park?
Okay.
But the idea is it's a car-free
development.
because it's right in the centre.
Well, you know what I think of all of that, but anyway, we won't go into
Planning
that
inspector's
now.
tied our hands on this one, unfortunately. Councillor Yarrow.
Can I just ask James a question? Is this going to strengthen our arms on other developments that are car-free within the borough?
So the wording that we use, so obviously this is just the head of term, there's a more detailed wording, and the wording we use currently in legal agreements we think is about as robust as we could get it, because it has evolved over time, and I know my legal colleague has, we've had lots of discussions over the wording of these agreements, so we're quite comfortable we have very robust wording now, but we just wanted to make sure that the head of term reflects the fact that the instructions of the legal team is going to be to do the full robust
but we now have an
wording.
inspector who's actually wanting to make sure that it's enforced, which I find interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody help us take this one forward. Straightforward. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Alfred Wellana seconded. Show of hands, please, on this. That's agreed. Before we go on to the next one, I have overlooked the addendum items on number 12. And I want to make absolutely sure, for clarity of purpose, this was the one where we adjusted the fenestration and delegated to the head of planning. What we should have done is also include in that resolution the addendum item as shown here, which is just a less onerous landscaping condition. So for the purpose of the vote, can we do it again, please? Okay, so this is agenda item 12, which was the terrace of houses where we had an issue with the fenestration and adjustment delegated to the head of planning. There should also be an amendment to the condition with regards to the landscaping. Okay?
I move officer's recommendation as amended on the addendum sheet and delegating the officers to seek matching windows on the development and to come back to us if they can't.
Thank you very much. Very nicely and clearly expressed there, Councillor Duncan. Who seconded that? Councillor Berry, you're seconding. Show of hands, please, on that again. Thank you. And my apologies for overlooking the addendum. Right, we're now on to 16.
Thank you, Chairman. This is relating to 66 Fairway Avenue, which is a detached bungalow, and the site is within the West Drayton Garden City area of special local character. The proposal involves raising and enlargement of the roof space and the addition of a roof over the existing single-storey extension to the rear. Your officers consider that in terms of its overall design and appearance it is unacceptable, and the Conservation Officer has commented that that is the case, and therefore we are recommending refusal. If I can just go through the plans. These bungalows are designed as sort of twins, so it sort of has one to the right of it which is similar, and its change in appearance would alter considerably the character of the street and particularly the character in relation to the adjoining property. So as you can see, there's a twin and part of the character of the Garden City area of special local character is these twin designs and so on, and this would be unacceptable for that reason. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you much. Colleagues, I did have an issue with regards to side windows and number 64. Head of Planning, would you wish to comment on that? I picked this up under the comments in public consultation.
There's two reasons I'd explain why I don't have a concern with it. Firstly, there's a lot of planning history, so we'd almost be introducing a new issue that hadn't... but the more important thing is, although the roof goes higher, the roof plane is effectively the same, so therefore the impact on light is effectively relatively unaltered. Had there been a much steeper pitch and big major change in the roof plane or a major raising of the eaves height, that could have made a difference, but effectively it's just the middle section of the roof goes higher. So I hope I may not explain that particularly well, but in effect there's no material increase in impact on light.
Thank you. That answered it to my satisfaction. Colleagues? Okay. Somebody here? Councillor Yarrow,
I
please.
find that no need for any further debate. I'll move the officer's recommendations to refuse.
Thank you very much. Seconded by anybody? Councillor Stead, thank you very much. Show of hands, please, on this one. To everybody. Thank you. Break the stream. We're moving